I'm Ryan Carter, 36, IT guy, husband, dad, mortgage payer, grill cleaner, standard suburban package. That night, I was supposed to be the proud husband. Julia's promotion to senior administrative coordinator at Collins Logistics had turned our small dining room into a stage. Her mom, Linda, kept saying, "This is just the beginning," like Julia had been drafted into the NBA. My mom, Karen, watched her the way you watch a dog that's already bitten once. Maddie sat next to me, legs swinging, face covered in apple pie crumbs. She tugged my sleeve every few minutes just to show me how many bites she'd taken. That's the kind of thing I'm good at. Checking wobbly bike wheels, fixing Wi-Fi, kissing scraped knees. It used to be enough. Julia held court at the head of the table. She told the promotion story for the third time. How Patrick Collins said she was the obvious choice. How he'd personally pushed it through. Every time she said his name, Janet, her coworker and built-in hype woman, smiled like there was an inside joke I wasn't in on. Her phone started buzzing under the table. Once, twice, 3 times. She tried to ignore it at first, then slid her hand under her napkin like she was adjusting her dress. I watched her face change, softening in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Not the polite wife smile. Something warmer, private. I took a sip of lukewarm beer and kept my voice flat. "Everything okay?" She didn't look at me. "Yeah, just Janet," she said, thumb moving faster than her mouth. "Janet texting you from across the table?" I asked. Janet looked up at the sound of her name, confused. Julia finally met my eyes. Her pause was less than a second, but in a marriage you feel those microseconds. "She's checking in about Monday," Julia added. "Schedule stuff." My mom saw the whole thing. I could feel her eyes on me, then on Julia, then on the phone. Karen Carter has a terrible poker face. Her jaw tightened like she was the one being lied to. The promotion letter sat on the kitchen counter, next to the gravy boat. Perfect pot roast, mashed potatoes just right, apple pie disappearing slice by slice. From the outside, it was a picture of a normal, functional family. Inside, something shifted. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No screaming, no plates thrown. Just my wife lying easily, my mother watching closely, and my daughter asking for more whipped cream while I realized I no longer believed my own "I'm just overthinking it" story. The air felt heavier. The laughter sounded half a beat late. For the first time, I didn't dismiss the knot in my gut. I didn't know exactly what Julia was celebrating that night, but I knew it wasn't just a promotion. I've never been the plate-throwing type. I don't go through purses or sniff shirts. When something doesn't add up, I don't explode, I audit. The Monday after her promotion dinner, Julia started her new responsibilities. That's what she called it. "Patrick wants me more involved. It might mean later nights." She kissed my cheek in the hallway, already half on her phone, and left smelling like the expensive perfume she saves for other people. That night, instead of watching TV, I sat in my home office with a mug of coffee I forgot to drink and a legal pad. Most husbands would have gone straight for the phone. But I'm an IT specialist. I live inside systems people forget are recording them all the time. So I started there. First, her timesheets. Julia had left her work laptop logged into the employee portal more than once. And I'm not stupid. I'd seen her entries before, the neat blocks of overtime Henderson account. Like a badge of honor, I pulled them up from memory, wrote down dates and hours. Second, badge logs. Nobody thinks about the badge system until it fails. Collins Logistics uses a standard access control server. I've set up the same software for clients. A couple of calls under the guise of consulting curiosity. Some social engineering with a junior admin who wanted to sound helpful, and I had what I needed, anonymous export, for testing. Third, our cell account. Joint plan, shared login, months of location pings and call details. Nothing illegal. Nothing dramatic. Just data. I lined it all up on the desk, dates, times, places. The way I would if I was debugging a network issue. Wednesday. Timesheet said she was at the office until 9:30 p.m. Badge logs showed her out at 7:12. Our phone's GPS had her parked downtown, 3 blocks from the Marriott, from 7:38 to a little after 11. Thursday. Late night for Patrick, according to her text. But the badge said she never scanned back in after lunch. The phone said she'd crossed the river at 3, stayed on the other side until almost midnight. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Glitch in the logs. GPS being weird. But it kept happening. Different days, same gaps. Overtime entries on nights her badge left early. Pings near the same hotel over and over. I wrote each mismatch on the yellow pad, one under the other, until it stopped looking like coincidence and started looking like a pattern. By 1 a.m., my hand hurt from writing. The house was quiet. From down the hall, I could hear Maddie rolling in her sleep, mumbling to herself. I sat back in my chair, stared at the columns of numbers and addresses and times. I'd started the night trying to prove I was just paranoid. I ended it with a different problem. I didn't just have a bad feeling anymore. I had logs. I had locations. I had the beginning of a story. And every new line I added made it clearer that I really didn't want to read the ending. If you want to test how sick a marriage is, don't go to counseling. Go to brunch with both families and watch who's actually eating. I picked the downtown cafe because it felt neutral. Brick walls, fake rustic tables, too loud music. Maddie could drown pancakes in syrup. The adults could pretend everything was normal and I could watch. Julia showed up looking like she dressed for a company photo. Hair perfect, new blouse. That "I'm doing great" smile she'd been practicing since the promotion. My mom, Karen, hugged her, but it was the kind of hug you give a stranger at a funeral. Linda, her mom, immediately launched into talking about Julia's trajectory. Janet slid into the booth next to Julia like she belonged there. She kept dropping Patrick's name into every other sentence. Patrick said this. Patrick thinks that. Like he was some invisible brunch guest. I watched Julia every time his name landed. Her eyes lit up the way they used to when I talked about a promotion or a new project. Only now, she barely asked about my work at all. The waitress took our order: pancakes for Maddie, omelet for me, avocado toast for Julia because Patrick's crowd probably eats that. And for a few minutes it was all clinking silverware and small talk. Then my mom started in. So, she said, too casually, this promotion. How long have you been working so closely with Patrick? Julia didn't look up from her mimosa. A while. It just developed. How many late nights did it take? My mom asked. The tone changed. Linda stiffened. Janet glanced at Julia like, you good? Julia laughed, too high, too quick. You know how it is. Big accounts. Henderson's a mess. Patrick's very hands-on. Hands-on, my mom repeated. Right? I felt the pressure building behind my ribs. Instead of jumping in, I stood up. Gonna get some air, I said. You guys want coffee refills? Nobody answered. Outside, I leaned against the brick wall and pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking, but something in me had stopped pretending. First call, Collins Logistics HR. I kept it vague. Questions about promotion procedures, documentation, reporting lines. I took mental notes on every hesitated answer. Second call, the family lawyer a coworker had used in a custody case. I left a message that wasn't hypothetical this time. Name situation. I think I need to understand my options. When I looked back through the glass, my mom's mouth was moving, and everyone's faces were locked on her. Then I saw it, that one word, clear even without sound. Affair. Julia went white. Janet stared at the table. Linda's hand flew to her chest like in some bad TV drama. I watched my wife's lips form the start of a denial, then something weaker. My mom didn't flinch. She just kept talking, calm and relentless, like someone who's decided lying time is over. By the time I walked back in, the table wasn't just about brunch anymore. The air had shifted. No one met my eyes. We weren't talking about stress or a rough patch now. The word was out. And once that word's sitting between you and your wife, you don't ever fully put it away again. That weekend, our house split in two. In Maddie's room, the world was crayons, cartoon theme songs, and a stuffed rabbit missing one eye. In my office, it was printer paper, browser tabs, and a man trying to take his heart out of the equation long enough to do what needed to be done. Saturday morning, I poured cereal, packed Maddie's overnight bag, and drove her to my sister's for a fun weekend. I kissed her forehead, told her I'd see her Sunday. She asked if Mommy was coming. I told her Mommy had a lot of work. That part, at least, was always true. When I got back home, Julia was in the shower, music on, door locked. I walked straight past our bedroom into my office and shut that door. 2. First move, phone records. Our carrier's portal laid it all out, dates, times, numbers. I exported 6 months' worth. Patrick's line showed up first as a work contact, then more and more as late-night calls to her cell. 10 minutes, 20, 42. Always after Maddie's bedtime. Always overtime nights. Second move, backups. The shared laptop in the living room had been set to back up both our phones monthly. Most people forget that setting after the first week. I hadn't. Julia thought deleting a thread on her phone killed it. She wasn't thinking about the snapshots sitting quietly on an external drive in a desk drawer. I restored one backup from 3 months ago and started digging. Most of it was normal marriage noise, kid pictures, grocery lists, memes. Then the pattern shifted. Patrick, saved under his full name like she didn't even feel the need to hide it. At first it was work. Then it wasn't. Jokes about escaping the zoo of the office. Complaints about me being checked out and boring. His "you deserve more, Julia." Her "you make me feel seen." I scrolled until I hit the ones that made something in my chest go tight. References to the hotel, to last time, to next time. Nothing explicit. It didn't need to be. I screenshotted everything, printed what mattered. Timestamps, names, context. Around noon, I drove to the downtown Marriott to ask about a potential conference. I ended up having a friendly chat with a security supervisor about an incident a few weeks back involving a loud couple on the 10th floor. One of them a local company owner he recognized from LinkedIn. The other a woman who matched Julia's description a little too well. He didn't give me anything official. He didn't have to. It was enough to know someone there remembered them. Back at home, Julia moved through the house like it was any other weekend. Laundry humming, TV on low, her in leggings and a sweatshirt, hair up. She asked what I was working on. Documentation, I said. It wasn't a lie. That night, I set my phone on the dresser angled at her side of the bed, screen black, camera rolling. Not because I wanted proof of anything physical, I already had what I needed, but because I'd learned something about myself in the last week. If she tried to twist this, tried to say I'd been the unstable one, I wanted every detail on my side. Sunday, I spread everything out on the office floor. Phone logs, GPS locations, screenshots, notes from my calls. I used a highlighter like a scalpel, cutting away anything emotional, circling only what a judge, a lawyer, or an HR investigator would care about. By late afternoon, the picture was complete enough that I didn't have to guess anymore. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a running side life with her boss, organized and maintained and justified. I stood in the doorway and watched Maddie color at the coffee table while Julia scrolled her phone on the couch. For a second, the urge hit me hard, to walk over, put everything in her lap, and demand answers right there with a cartoon playing in the background. Then I remembered how easily she'd lied at that dinner, how fast she'd reached for Janet, like a spare key. If I confronted her without a plan, she'd gaslight, cry, twist, and turn me into an unreasonable husband in front of everyone who mattered. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not in front of my daughter. Not this time. So I went back into the office, closed the door, and kept building the case. I picked the kitchen table on purpose. Not the bedroom, not the driveway, not some parking lot argument where the neighbors could pretend not to listen. The same table where we'd planned birthday parties, paid bills, cut up Maddie's chicken nuggets. If our marriage was going on trial, it was happening there. Dinner was painfully normal. Mac and cheese for Maddie, frozen vegetables, store-brand juice. Julia talked about some office drama, careful not to say Patrick's name too often. I nodded in the right places and focused on getting my kid to eat 3 more bites. Afterward, I read Maddie a story, tucked her in, checked that her nightlight was on. I kissed her forehead and told her I loved her. I meant it more than I ever had. When I came back downstairs, Julia was rinsing plates. I sat at the table and put the manila folder down in the center. "Can you sit for a minute?" I asked. She dried her hands slowly, already wary. "Is everything okay?" "That depends," I said. She sat opposite me. I let the silence stretch. "How many late nights have you been working for Patrick?" I started. "Calm down. Just ballpark." She didn't blink. "I don't know. A lot. You know how it's been." "And the Henderson account. That's the one keeping you at the office?" I asked. "Yeah, I've told you this, Ryan. Why are you asking me like?" I opened the folder. Timesheets on one side. Badge logs, GPS screenshots, printed texts on the other. I walked her through it like a bug report. "Here you log overtime. Here your badge clocks out early. Here your phone parks at the Marriott. Here's Patrick texting you about how last night was incredible." Her face drained, then hardened. "You went through my phone?" "I went through the backups," I said. "You're not that good at deleting." I looked her in the eye. "Are you having an affair with Patrick?" First came denial, then anger, then the stall. "It's complicated," she said. "No," I replied. "Complicated is our schedule. This is simple. Yes or no." She stared at the table. "I don't know what you want me to say." "Do you love him?" I asked. "I don't know." "Do you love me?" Longer pause. "I don't know that either." Something in me went very quiet then. Not broken, just done. In that silence, I realized I wasn't negotiating for my marriage anymore. I was deciding what kind of man my daughter was going to watch me be. After the kitchen, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. Felt like a crime scene. Julia packed a small overnight bag. Just enough to be temporary, just enough to keep one foot in. She said she was going to stay with her mother for a few days, until we cool off. I didn't argue. I helped her carry the bag to the door because I'm still that guy. I hold doors even for people walking out of my life. When it clicked shut behind her, the silence was thick. No TV. No dishwasher. Just the refrigerator humming and the faint sound of Maddie snoring through the wall. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the words. "I don't know. It's complicated. I don't know if I love you." It's funny how fast a decade can shrink down into 3 sentences. At 2:17 a.m., I gave up on the idea that sleep was going to fix anything. I got up, padded down the hallway, checked on Maddie, hair everywhere, drooling on her pillow, clutching that one-eyed rabbit. She was the only thing in that house that still felt solid. In my office, I shut the door and turned on the desk lamp. The manila folder sat where I'd left it. Evidence. Facts. The corpse of our marriage in paper form. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the number the lawyer had left in his voicemail. "David Brennan," he answered, voice rough but awake. "You okay, Mr. Carter?" "No," I said, "but I'm clear." This time I didn't dance around it. I laid it all out. Affair with her boss, timesheet games, hotel nights, the way she'd already started painting me as controlling to her friends. I asked what mattered in court and what was just pain. We talked about custody, property, fault, what judges look for, what I needed ready before she realized how much trouble she was actually in. By the time the first gray light showed through the blinds, I knew my position. Primary custody, the house, clean separation from any debt she built trying to find herself. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like a surgeon signing off on an amputation. The marriage was gone. The only thing left to save was my kid's future, and the man she was going to learn about men from. 2 days later, I sat in a glass-walled conference room on the 15th floor, facing the city I'd been driving through like a ghost. The table was dark wood, the kind people buy to make bad news look professional. My lawyer, David Brennan, had his files lined up in front of him, color tabs, neat stacks. Across from us, Julia's attorney sat with a thinner folder and the tight smile of someone who hadn't seen the whole board yet. Julia walked in last. She wore her office armor. Blazer, heels, makeup just shy of too much. For a second, her face softened when she saw me, like she thought maybe we could talk as husband and wife before the legal part started. That version of us was dead. I wasn't there as her husband anymore. I was Maddie's father and Brennan's client. That was it. We did the introductions. Everyone pretended this was just another meeting. David started simple. Grounds, adultery. He said it calmly, like a diagnosis. Julia flinched, then tried to recover. Her lawyer cleared his throat and started in with the script. Allegations, emotional tension, misunderstandings. David let him talk himself out, then opened our main folder. We didn't dump everything at once. We walked her through it piece by piece. Timesheets versus badge logs. Badge logs versus GPS versus Marriott receipts. Her lawyer shifted in his chair, already recalculating. Then came the printed messages. Patrick's number, his name, his words. Last night was incredible. You deserve more than the life you're in. I'll handle it if anyone asks. Julia's eyes filled, but not with guilt, with realization. She hadn't known how much I'd seen. David slid out the last document. An internal statement from Collins Logistics. Patrick, in polished HR language, describing an inappropriate situation with a subordinate. Lines about her emotional confusion and his efforts to de-escalate. It was basically him tossing her under the bus in corporate. That one hit her like a slap. Whatever fantasy she'd built about the two of them didn't survive that paragraph. I watched her look at me then, like maybe I'd jump in, defend her, share the outrage. I didn't. When the talk shifted to terms, David didn't raise his voice. He just laid out the offer. I keep the house. I get majority custody. She resigns from Collins Logistics. In return, we don't involve law enforcement over the timesheet fraud or push the company harder. Her lawyer went pale at the word fraud. Julia looked between us, between the life she'd blown up and the one she might still salvage a piece of. For the first time since this started, I felt not power exactly, just clarity. I wasn't begging her to stay. I wasn't asking her to choose me. I was stating what it would cost to walk away from the fire she'd set without letting it burn my daughter down with us. A few days after the conference room, our driveway looked like a budget moving commercial. No smiling couple, no fresh start, just cardboard, tension, and a pickup that had seen too many winters. By then, the logistics were already done. Joint accounts closed, my paycheck rerouted. Every password I could legally change was changed. I'd moved our important documents into a fireproof box in my office and left her copies in a plain envelope on the counter. Julia pulled up with her brother, Eric. He avoided eye contact like there was a bet on it. She walked in like a guest, hesitant, looking around as if someone had moved the walls. Her stuff went into boxes faster than I expected. Clothes, shoes, some books she'd always meant to read, picture frames she didn't want to leave, even if the smiles in them meant something different now. Maddie wrapped herself around my leg as we watched from the doorway. She knew something was wrong. Kids always do. Is Mommy leaving forever? She asked, voice small. I knelt so we were eye level. No, I said. Mommy's going to have her own place now. You'll see her on weekends and some days during the week. None of this is your fault. And I'm not going anywhere. This is still your home. She nodded, but she wasn't understanding. It was trust. That was heavier than any box. Inside, the promotion letter that had started all this sat on the counter like a joke. Next to it, an envelope from Collins Logistics HR confirming her voluntary resignation. Clean corporate font, no mention of hotel rooms or deleted texts. Julia hovered near it, fingers brushing the edges without picking it up. Guess that's that, she murmured. Yeah, I said. It is. When most of the boxes were loaded, she asked Eric for a minute and walked back in alone, stopping in the kitchen. Ryan, is there really no way back from this? She asked. No makeup now, just tired eyes and a voice that sounded suddenly small. There's no way back to the version of me who didn't know, I said. And he's the one you were married to, the guy who'd swallow this to keep the peace. He doesn't get to raise Maddie. She swallowed, looked down, then nodded once. No big scene, no begging, just quiet acceptance of the corner she'd helped paint herself into. From now on, use the parenting app, I added. Schedules, changes, everything. keeps things clear. Okay, she said. We walked to the driveway. Eric shut the tailgate. Maddie clung tighter as Julia hugged her, promising calls and visits and all the usual lines people say when they're leaving but still want to feel like parents. I didn't interfere. I just watched, memorizing the moment for what it was. Not a tragedy, not a victory. Just the end of something broken. When the truck finally pulled away, the house felt bigger and emptier at the same time. The silence rolled in thick, then thinned out. I stood in the doorway for a long minute, listening to nothing. Then I shut the door, locked it, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like my house again. Not perfect, not happy, but honest. By the time I'm telling you this, the sharp edges are mostly sanded down. The divorce is in a file cabinet. The custody schedule lives in an app. I can say my ex-wife without feeling like I'm talking about somebody who died. I'm still Ryan Carter, IT guy, Dad. The guy fixing a loose cabinet door on a Tuesday night after Maddie's asleep, wondering if he remembered to switch the laundry. On paper, not much has changed. But I'm not the man who sat at that promotion dinner explaining away the knot in his gut as stress and being a good sport. I'm telling you this because there's a line nobody warns men about. The one between trusting your wife and pretending not to see what's in front of you. I lived on the wrong side of it for too long. Here's what I learned the hard way. If something feels off, you don't need to scream. You don't need to punch walls. You need information. Feelings are for your pillow. Evidence is for court, for HR, for the day she decides to rewrite history and cast you as the villain. Gathering that evidence didn't make me bitter. It made me prepared in a system that doesn't care about your heartbreak, just your documentation. I'm not going to stand here and say I was perfect. I checked out sometimes. I buried myself in code when I should have been talking. I assumed she knew. I appreciated her and skipped saying it out loud. But her affair wasn't my bug to fix. It was a choice. Repeated, deliberate choices. The difference now is simple. I have boundaries. Hard ones. You cheat, you lie, you make me the backup plan. I don't negotiate my self-respect to keep the picture on the wall. There's no new woman in this story. No grand romantic comeback. Just a quiet house. A sleeping 7-year-old down the hall. My laptop closed for once. And me sitting in my own living room knowing one thing for sure. I didn't let someone else write the ending of my life while I was too scared to pick up the pen.